Now that we understand how basic argument passing works in Vue, let's talk about how event object is passed to a view. So for that, we will create an input text box, and then here we will use on input equals to, and then we will type in the name of a method that we will be creating soon. So we'll call this as set name, and let's make it smaller. Now here we will define this method as set name, and what it will do is we will create another property that would store its value name, and by default it would be empty, and then we'll simply show this value here. So now if I reload my HTML page, you can see we have an input text box here. Now what I'm trying to do is whatever I enter here, I want it to get visible in the paragraph tag below. So how can I do that is I added a on bind on the input event of it. And how this works is whenever I start typing anything in it, this particular method set name would be called because we have binded it here. Now, how can we get its value or whatever the value the user is typing? So for that, we will use an event here. Now, this is a parameter that you don't need to pass yourself. It automatically gets passed by itself. So how we can use this is we can simply type in this.name equal to event dot target dot value. Now event would be you pressing a particular key in your keyboard. Then the target would be the input text box that we have just created, and the value would be the value that the user has just entered. So if I run this now and type in hello 123, you can see it takes in the value and then assigns it in the name. Now this is how you can use the event object. Now you can also pass in other arguments to this method with the event object. So suppose if I also want to pass in a greeting with it, let's just say oops. And then what I'll do here is I'll add another argument here that would say temp, and then I would simply add the value temp. So now if I reload my program and then type in anything, it doesn't work right now. So why is that? So this happening because in the index.html, we have only defined one parameter here, whereas we have to define two parameters. So to pass in the event object here, we can simply type in comma, and then the first parameter would be event. So these $event and the event object are inbuilt objects that the Vue provides, or the plain vanilla script also provides. Now if I type in hello, you can see whatever I'm typing is getting added here with oops at the end. Now that we understand how arguments work with event object, let's dive deeper into events. So let's talk about event modifiers. So if I create a form here and then add in a submit button, so I can use button and then submit, and I'll use submit inside it. So now if I reload my program here, you can see I have a submit button here. Now if I click on it, you can see it reloads the whole page right now. So to make it more apparent, I'll create a method here called submit form, which would create an alert saying submit was clicked. And I'll use that with v on click and then submit form. Now, one more thing to note here is that instead of typing v dash on here all the time, you can simply use a shorthand called at the rate, and that would work the same. So if I reload my program here and then click on submit, you can see I get an alert message saying submit was clicked. And then if I click on OK, it reloads the whole page. So this reloading of whole page happens because whenever you click on a submit button in a form, it sends out a request to the server, which in our case is our local machine that is also hosting the server. So that's why we are seeing a refresh here. Now suppose if we do not want it to reload the page, how can we prevent it from doing so? So one way to prevent it is we go to our app.js file and then we access the event object that it sends whenever you are clicking on that, and I can use the event dot prevent default method that would prevent the default behavior of that form that is reloading the page. So if I reload it again, and to make it more apparent, let's just add some values into the counter so that we have some values or temporary values here. And then if I click on submit now, then submit was clicked, click on OK, and you can see the value was retained here. But if I remove it from here, so let's comment this out or just remove it, then save it. And now if I reload it and add some value here, click on submit, click on OK, you can see the whole page is being reloaded. Because of that, the counter becomes 0 again. So this how you can do that in plain old vanilla JavaScript. But how to do that using Vue? So Vue allows us to use some event modifiers. So one of the modifier that we are interested in right now is using prevent. So let's just remove the event from here. Then we'll go to index.html, and after click, we can simply write dot prevent, which would prevent the default behavior of the form submission button. So if I now reload my page again, add some value in the counter, and then click on submit, you can see it retains the counter value, which proves that the page was not reloaded. Now there are other event modifier as well with Vue that comes into play. One of them we have already seen, that is dot prevent, that prevents default behavior of a form. Then we have a dot stop that stops the event propagation, that is generally used for preventing scenarios like event bubbling. Other than that, we also have some event modifiers on input tag as well, like keyup.enter that checks if enter key is pressed on that particular input tag, and so on. Now you can again go to the MSDN documentation or Vue documentation for checking which event modifiers are accessible for a particular HTML tag. Now one more directive that I would like to show you before we end this video is v1s. So suppose if I do not want my counter to change whenever an event is clicked, how can I do that? So if I create another paragraph tag with the same value and now reload my page here, click on add, you can see both of them are getting changed. But now suppose if I want this to denote the starting value and I do not want it to change, so how can I do that? So for doing that, we can use a directive called v1s that would prevent it from changing the value inside of it. So here, if I add 10 now, you can see The second value changes, but first one remains the same. So this is just a niche directive that isn't really used in our production environment, but something that you should know. So that's pretty much it for the method and event binding in Vue. If you have any questions related to this, you can let me know in the comment section down below. As always, we'll end this video with a quote that says, "Progress isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet courage to try again tomorrow." Thank you for watching and have a great day.